Hello and a very good evening to you. Welcome to News First Primetime News live on TV1. I am Shaheen Jurangpati.
And I am Dasniya Fadha. Let's start off with a look at tonight's headlines.
Cabinet paper regarding the controversial Hambantota oil refinery project revealed. President says he does not approve the signing of the proposal co-sponsoring the resolution made in Geneva. Transparency International Sri Lanka raises the spectre of a money laundering scam behind the Hambantota oil refinery project. Nadimal Pereira deported from Dubai and released by the CID following debrief. Former prison officer continues to be interrogated. Anradisa Nayaka's benchmark on Sri Lankan leaders.
As mentioned in our headlines a short while ago, we have a special expose on the controversial project, the oil refinery project in the EPZ in Mirijavela, Hambantota. The oil refinery project, yes, the oil refinery project that the government said is done at a investment of $3.85 billion into the country. Now, through our investigative journalists, we have been able to get hold of the cabinet paper that has been put with regard to this special oil refinery, this controversial, I should use the word controversial because I'm going to reveal the details that are mentioned in this cabinet paper as well to you in a short while. We have the cabinet paper, and guess who the minister is that has put forward this cabinet paper before the cabinet of ministers when it comes to this special, this controversial project in Mirijavela in the Hambantota EPC. You guessed right, it is this gentleman over here, Minister Malik Samaravikrama, who has put forward this cabinet paper. And what I have right in front of you, I'm able to show this to you. This is the cabinet paper that has been put forward for the Mirijavela project with regard to the oil refinery. Now let's get to the details that are mentioned here. Yes, from time to time the government came forward and spoke about this project, and they said that $3.85 billion will be invested from Oman, from an Oman party, and from a company in Singapore identified as Silver Spark, where afterwards it was revealed that there was an Indian company through Singapore will be investing this money in the country. We spoke to you about the Indian businessman, his connection, his controversies surrounding the coal scam in India, obtaining money to put a child into a medical college that he had owned and operated. And we also spoke to you about the company with regard to this investment, and that the company is a collection of his family members, especially his wife, his daughter and his son, and this company through Singapore is trying to allegedly invest in Sri Lanka. We spoke to you about the controversial nature of this businessman as well. Now, like journalists here in Sri Lanka, journalists in India have also got hold of certain controversial documents pertaining to this particular business. I will draw your attention to one such document. This was published a short while ago in the Hindu, where Mr. Jagat Rakshagan, who is the businessman, a leader of the DMK party, has put forward his election affidavit with regard to the upcoming Lok Sabha elections in their country, where he says that he has quit the Singapore-based firm last year. The Singapore-based firm is the Silver Sparks company that we are talking about, that is going to bring $3.85 billion investment into the country for an oil refinery in Mirijavela. Now the story goes a bit beyond this. Yes, he might say that he has resigned from this company, but what happened to that $3.85 billion investment? Who is that investment coming from? Where rather is that investment coming from is the question that I'm trying to raise right now, because with the details that are available in this article, there has not been any purchase of shares from that particular company in Singapore. So basically, if you go through this article, which is available on the internet, anyone can read it. I'm sure the people who have been speaking about this project will also go through this article that is now available on the internet. The 3.85 billion rupees that is supposed to come into the country, it's missing. No one is talking about purchasing shares, especially this businessman who is embroiled in controversy in India says that he has quit the Singapore-based company a year ago. His wife, who is also a shareholder, had agreed to purchase 4.5 million shares of this particular company, but money has not been sent to buy the shares of this company. So all in all, this company that is trying to invest in our country, allegedly, according to several high-ranking ministers of our country, the company has not yet commenced full-fledged operations. This is what the Hindu, quoting the affidavit provided by Mr. Jagat Rakshagan, a leader of the DMK party in India, is saying today. This was a short while ago. So let me come back to the document that we have at hand, put forward by this gentleman, Minister Malik Samaravikrama. Now, we are talking about a project that is going to create 10 million metric tons annually, refined oil for the export market. Now, when we are talking about a project that is this big, we are also saying on the other hand that this project is a $3.85 billion US project. But the point that is not conveyed properly to the general public of our country, what they are trying to hide is that this is a project that will be carried out for over 44 months or 4 years. So the investment, if you break it down to a year, it's about just above $1 billion US. That's one point. Now they also, in this cabinet paper that I showed to you earlier, they also speak about the employment opportunities that will be provided. One is for about 565 local employees, 565 local people will be taken into this oil refinery once it's established in 4 years as employees. And 185 jobs will also be provided for foreign individuals who will be coming into the country for this particular controversial oil refinery project being put up in the Mirijaville area in the EPZ. Now, this particular cabinet paper that you see here has been put forward on the 15th of February 2019. Now, is this the first time that such a cabinet paper had been put forward with regard to this specific project? No, this is not the first time a cabinet paper has been put forward for this particular project. In 2016, as we mentioned to you day before yesterday on our special report, in 2016 a cabinet paper had been presented with regard to an oil refinery project. In 2018 a cabinet paper had been put forward with regard to this particular project, and this particular final cabinet paper had been put forward in February of 2019. And as parliamentarians in the parliament mentioned over the days, last few days, when these cabinet papers were presented before the cabinet, some of the companies, especially the Singapore Sparks company that we just saw, where the chairman or the owner is saying that he had quit 1 year ago, had not even been registered in Singapore, and the new companies had also not been registered. Now, we don't have to say, we don't have to speak about this particular businessman in India, because everything regarding him is clearly mentioned in this article and in a number of articles put forward by various media outlets in India. And the family involvement of this company is very clearly mentioned in all of these as well. Now, what we are trying to talk about here is what this company is going to bring to the country. And according to this particular cabinet paper, it is clearly mentioned that about $9 billion will come into the country as an annual income. $9 billion will come into the country as an annual income. But what they are not revealing, yes, of course, if it's 9 billion, it's definitely good for the country, it's good for the rupee, and it's good for the economy as a whole. But what they are not revealing to the general public, or what they are not, everyone is talking about this 9 billion, but what they are not speaking of is the fact that this 9 billion will come, if at all, in 10 years after the completion of the project. So 4 years to complete the project, and then another 10 years the country has to wait, if at all, for a profit to come in. Now, with all of this happening in the country, if there is an attempt or not to whether this project is a success or not is for the general public to decide based on the information that is available. But international organizations like Transparency International Sri Lanka have come forward, they have spoken about this, and they have issued a clear warning to Sri Lanka with regard to this particular project. Let's have a look at what Transparency International had to say. Our producers will now play the Transparency International media release that was issued today.
Transparency International Sri Lanka in its media release says the main investor in the project, the Singapore-based investment vehicle Silver Park International Pte Limited, is a company controlled by the family of Tamil Nadu politician and former Indian Union Minister Dr. S. Jagat Rakshan, whose business interests have previously been implicated by Indian authorities and the media in several alleged corruption scandals. It also reveals that of the 40 FATF recommendations which set the international standards on combating money laundering, recommendation 12 requires that reasonable measures are taken to ascertain the source of wealth and source of funds in transactions involving politically exposed persons.
In light of those risks, we have under something called a grey list, which the Central Bank of Sri Lanka is working very hard to get off. But when we see investment like this, there are always going to be certain questions which are asked. And recommendation 12 of something called the Financial Action Task Force recommendations, which is the specific entity which is also placing Sri Lanka on the grey list, it mentions that the source of funds and the source of wealth of individuals making such investments, particularly who are politically exposed persons, which Dr. Jagat Rakshakan clearly is, must be looked at in greater detail. So what they call enhanced due diligence. In light of that, the Board of Investment in Sri Lanka really must take steps to ensure that this is not a money laundering risk and look at this with ever closer scrutiny.
However, the Deputy Minister of Development Strategies and International Trade states that such a process should not be followed regarding investments. When looking at the board of directors of this firm, it's a group of relatives of an Indian politician. How clean is the track record of the topmost person in this board of directors?
හරිත සහතික බලන්න නැත. මොහුට විරුද්ධව ශ්‍රී ලංකා ආයෝජන මණ්ඩලය අපිට ආයෝජකයෙක්දී වෙලා තියෙනවලු මූල්‍ය නෑ බලන්නේ වත්කම් සොයපු ආකාරය පිළිබඳව ඉන්දියාවේ ගැටලුවක් තියෙනවා. අපේ රටට නිවැරදි ක්‍රමවේද අපේ රටේ ශ්‍රී ලංකා මහ බැංකුව 90.
We do not look into those. According to the procedure followed by the central bank, we do not care if a particular investor has murdered people in his own country. It does not matter whether he had looted either. We do not probe those. The BOI does not look into the background. Isn't our country facing many crises today as a result of such ignorant statements? Deputy Minister, this is a shameful statement. Are you agreeing that any individual, regardless of whether he is a murderer, international criminal or racketeer, can invest in our country? It goes without saying that the henchmen follow the path treaded on by their leader. Who are the people discussing with the leader? We cover the faces of a few people because of the positive image they portray to the public. Our critical decisions concerning investment projects, business plans, as well as political decisions taken at such discussion tables. Anuradhisa Nayaka made a revelation today regarding the individuals who joined this discussion. Don't expect Ranil to stop being a thief. He was the mastermind and orchestrator behind the bond scam. There are two sides to this bond scam. One side is the central bank. Arjun Mahendran belongs to that side. The other side is perpetual treasuries. Now, on which side are investigations being carried out on? They still have not probed into the side of the central bank. Remember that. Current investigations are being carried out on the private company. One of the directors of Perpetual Treasuries is Ranjan Hulugalla. The government arrested him for being connected to the bond scam. Ranil Wickramasinghe had made him the financial director of Lake House. He was hiding at Shangri-La during the time of his arrest. When he heard that the police were on the way to arrest him, he fled in his Benz car and he was being chased by the CID. He was heading towards Temple Trees. Unfortunately for him, the railway gates at Slave Island had closed and he was arrested. Where do the rogues go? To the palace called Temple Trees. Isn't Ranil Wickramasinghe a rogue? Not the post of Prime Minister. He is not even suitable to be the chairman of the funeral aid society of a village.
Who
put the cabinet paper?
Yeah,
who is the one who put the cabinet paper? That means the person who put the cabinet paper, that minister, he is responsible, and he should be. He has broken the law. He has misled the cabinet.
Not only
he
that,
should be sacked. If one of our group directors did this,
and definitely he may be
Mr. Chairman, there will be no need for the Mr. Chairman to say anything. The group HR will sack the guy before.
That definitely. Why the government and cabinet have a responsible common. If the one minister put the wrong cabinet paper. They should have a go through the cabinet paper. Who is the company? Who is the owner? Where is the register?
That means no due diligence has been carried out.
And
what was the ministry secretary doing? Was he asleep?
Yeah.
What was he doing?
That's the thing. That's the thing. Maybe there may be a new cabinet paper come from the Minister of International Trade or Affairs, Mr. Malik Samaravikrama.
Yeah.
He may be the person who brings the cabinet paper. Otherwise, Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Both who bring the cabinet paper, there is no deviation, no debate, I think so. That's why, without the due diligence of the company, they give the approval. Exactly. Why the cabinet? They should have asked who is the owner, what the business they are doing, and how the business they are running. Then we have that kind of criteria to search when we are going to the approval in the cabinet.
Yeah.
Nothing happened because of why? Mr. Wickramasinghe insists to approve the cabinet paper, otherwise the cabinet paper will not pass. That's the thing.
Well, I think
I said for us, this is the setting. Now we can see so many things near future.
Meanwhile, the opposition alleges that talks about a national government have been brought back at a time when extensive investigations are ongoing into the bond scam.
The Sri Lanka Freedom Party has not come to a conclusion regarding the concept of the national government. The United People's Freedom Alliance has not come to a consensus. Yesterday, the heads of perpetual treasuries were arrested. Who is in charge of the police now? It's President Maithripala Sirisena. The people who were involved in the central bank bond scam and are close friends of Prime Minister Wickramasinghe are being arrested. Very soon, a prominent minister in this government will be arrested. Not only that, they will take a statement from Prime Minister Ranil Wickramasinghe. There are a few members of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party who are drooling over the national government and attempting to stop the next presidential candidate from contesting and to prevent the CID from arresting the Prime Minister.
Sri Lanka නිදහස් පක්ෂේ කෙල හලාගෙන ඉන්න පෙරේත පිරිසක් උත්සාහ කරනවා මිත්‍රෝනි.
බැඳුම් කරේට අද වෙලා තියෙන දේ.
What has happened to the bond scam now? 5 suspects were arrested yesterday. A few more will be arrested in the future as well. They will be released on bail in a few months. That is what will happen. But the two defendants in this case have not showed up. If you take the Bond Commission report, the COPE report and the Auditor General's report, you can clearly understand who the suspects are and who are the exact people who aided and abetted this crime. The entire country knows who aided the perpetrators. But this is not spoken of. Instead, they speak of a presidential election. President Maithripala Sirisena says that he does not accept the facts that the UNHRC resolution on Sri Lanka that the island co-sponsored was signed by the Sri Lankan ambassador. The president was speaking at the opening ceremony of the newly constructed police station in Megahatanna.
At the recent UNHRC session in Geneva, a resolution was presented by Britain and was adopted where Sri Lanka was a co-sponsor of the resolution.
Regarding the land occupied by the military in the northern and eastern provinces, some progress has been noted and further steps should be taken to complete this crucial process.
I would like to emphasize the fact that we as a government would only accept the accurate facts in the report presented at the UNHRC, but we reserve the right to reject all inaccurate information put forward by them. The report of the High Commissioner says that the land held by the army in areas in the north and east during the war had not been released, and it recommended that an independent commission be appointed to release these lands. I believe the reason behind her making this statement are the misleading statements made by non-governmental organizations. We will not appoint any independent commissions. We will not act according to what outsiders say. We will only act according to our constitution. I must clearly state that under no circumstances are we ready to act outside the constitution, and we will never act outside the constitution. I said that I am not ready to allow foreign judges to hear cases in this country. On the 25th of February, the resolution that was co-sponsored was signed by the Sri Lankan ambassador without my knowledge. The foreign ministry of the country does not know of this. The secretary to the foreign ministry does not know about this. The president holds the responsibility of the country's foreign policy, international relations and international affairs. This cannot be done by anyone below that. I express my strong objection on the move, and I reject the fact that this document was signed. I changed the delegation that was due to be sent to Geneva. However, the delegation was decided upon without my consent. This was not discussed with me. This document was signed after a person who is not a member of the public service in Sri Lanka was sent to Geneva as the Director General of the Reconciliation Bureau. That is how this resolution was signed. I see this as a betrayal of the tri-forces of the country. I see this as a betrayal of the people and the government of Sri Lanka. The address delivered by Tilak Marapana at Geneva, we wrote that speech from here and asked him to read it there. On print media, there were headlines in big letters that read, Foreign Minister Tilak Marapana rejects hybrid courts in Sri Lanka. That was included after we held discussions on the matter. If not for the discussions, that was not the address that was to be made. Meanwhile, issuing a communique, UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Michelle Bachelet says she stands fully behind the report and the oral statement she made when presenting it to the Human Rights Council, and that she believes it fairly and objectively reflects the situation in Sri Lanka. She adds that she is deeply disappointed by the spin that has been put on her discussion with the Sri Lankan government delegation, noting that other news outlets in Sri Lanka were also continuing to significantly misrepresent the Human Rights Council process in Geneva. The communique goes on to state that an article published on a newspaper on Monday seriously misrepresents her discussion of the recent UN Human Rights Office report on Sri Lanka with a government delegation attending the Human Rights Council in Geneva. She has further said that neither of these claims are true.
We can't, Honourable Speaker, for example, bring legislation to amend the medical ordinance to permit someone who is not a doctor to do a surgery. But if you bring that legislation, even with a referendum and a two-thirds majority, the Supreme Court will never allow that type of legislation to be passed. Now, even foreign medical specialists, when they come here, they have to pass the Act 16. That is a medical exam that is designed to judge their competency in the field of medicine. He might be a very eminent medical specialist abroad, but when he comes here, he must satisfy that criteria that we require is there in him. So in the same way, we don't know whether it is possible to pass legislation in that way. And without legislation, we can't in any case have foreign judges sitting in our tribunals to adjudicate the culpability of our citizens.
The Daily Mirror reported today that Sri Lanka has planned to hold ministerial-level FTA talks with China next month.
The article reads, Minister of Development Strategies and International Trade Malik Samaravikrama will visit China next month to hold ministerial-level discussions to resume negotiations in connection to a proposed Sri Lanka-China free trade agreement. The paper quotes the minister as saying he is planning to hold discussions with top Chinese government officials to resume free trade agreement negotiations between the two countries as early as possible. However, as Chinese government officials are currently occupied with negotiations to reach a settlement with the United States over the trade war that has erupted between the two countries, there could be possible delays in resuming free trade agreement negotiations between Sri Lanka and China.
Singer Amal Pereira's son Nadimal Pereira and prison officer Lalit Kumara, who were recently arrested in Dubai together with notorious underworld leader Markandure Madhush, have been deported from Dubai. They were taken into the custody of the CID as soon as they arrived in the island. While Nadimal Pereira has been released after questioning, the prison's officer was taken into the custody of the Colombo Crimes Division. The duo had arrived at the BIA early this morning in a Dubai Airways aircraft. After 7 hours of questioning jointly conducted by the Criminal Investigations Department and the Police Narcotic Bureau, the son of Amal Pereira, Nadimal Pereira, was allowed to leave the premises. He has not broken any law. The Dubai police has confirmed with me that he had not even consumed alcohol nor cannabis. The CID will question any individual who has been deported from some country. Accordingly, he was questioned and thereby released. He went home. There is nothing after that. I believe that even Amal will come back to the island either tomorrow or the day after. The questioning of individuals, including the former prisons officer Lalit Kumara, is not over as yet. He will be subjected to further questioning. Individuals, including Lalit Kumara, were involved in an accident in Kamburupitiya in 2015, where a group of people were scared by displaying a T-56 rifle and subsequently wounded. The court case related to this incident is still ongoing. Investigations have revealed that this individual is a close associate of notorious underworld kingpin Markandure Madhush. These investigations have further revealed that Markandure Madhush had even paid for the phone bills of Lalit Kumara and others.
ගෙවලා තිබෙන්නේ මාකඳුරේ මදුෂ් විසින් නෙවන ලද මුදල් වලින් බවටත් අනාවරණය වෙලා තිබෙනවා.
On a separate note, the Supreme Court today examined a fundamental rights petition filed by the cousin of Samarasinghe Arachi Madhush Lakshit, alias Markandure Madhush, barring his arrest. The fundamental rights petition was filed by Abhesekara Veerasekara Shriyani, a resident of Hatpur, Wasuri Vava, was taken before Supreme Court judges Priyanta Jayawardena, Prasanna Jayawardena and Esture Raja. The media spokesperson representing the Supreme Court judges, senior lawyer Madhava Tennakon, said he has no right to present a fundamental rights petition through a relative. Former Director of Litro Gas, Neil Bandara Hapohinna, was acquitted and released by the Permanent High Court trial at Bar today from the 24 indictments filed against him, including the criminal misappropriation of 500 million rupees from Litro Gas. The order was made when the request by Defence Counsel to acquit and release former President's Chief of Staff Gamini Sinarath and 3 others from the case without recording evidence from the defence was taken up in court today. However, court decided to only release Neil Bandara Hapohinna and dismissed the request made on behalf of the 3 other defendants and ordered for the case to be taken forward with the recording of evidence from the defence. The case was postponed to the 6th of May. Moving on to more local news, the High Commission of India in Colombo organised a joint celebration of Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Day in Colombo yesterday.
This event, that saw the attendance of the High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka, was held under the auspices of the Chief Prelates, Anunayaka Theras, members of the Mahasangha and the Minister of Housing, Construction and Cultural Affairs Sajith Premadasa. Around 270 Sri Lankan alumni who studied in India under the ITEC and the ICCR scholarship schemes of the Indian government attended the celebration organised by the Indian High Commission.
Indo-Sri Lanka cooperation in the field of education has a long history. It had been launched in the 1960s to strengthen human resource development and capacity building in the 2 countries. And it has been continuously improved and refocused over the years. This coordination program has brought our people ever closer together. The government of Sri Lanka, I assure Your Excellency, is committed to promote capacity building as a multifaceted approach that addresses the ability of the personal and institutions at all levels.
Our efforts in Sri Lanka are guided by the priorities of Sri Lankan government and its people. From building houses, providing emergency ambulance service, from constructing schools and hospitals to providing livelihood development tools, our efforts bear fruits when we see the priceless smiles on the faces of the Sri Lankan people.
A special event was held at the Parliament today to celebrate 12 prominent Sri Lankan women in recognition of their extraordinary achievements. The event was titled Celebrating Sri Lankan Women Changemakers. Former Prime Minister late Sirimao Bandaranayake and Dr. Vimala De Silva, the founder of Devi Balika Vidyalaya, were celebrated during the event in the fields of politics and education respectively. Dr. Premala Sivaprakasa Pillai, Sivasekaram, Sumitra Piris and Professor Savitri Gunasekara, an international expert on women and children's rights, were recognized representing the fields of science, arts and law respectively. Jayanti Kuruthumpala, the first Sri Lankan to summit Mount Everest and one of 4 women to accomplish this feat, Dr. Asha DeVos, internationally acclaimed Sri Lankan marine biologist and ocean educator and the first Sri Lankan with a PhD in marine mammal research, were celebrated in the fields of sports and environment. Dr. Hasini Jaitilaka, breakthrough cancer researcher, Nichelle De Silva, arts educator and social entrepreneur, Princy Mangalika, an activist and social worker, were celebrated for their achievements in the field of science, social enterprise and social activism, respectively. Kasturit Chellaraja Wilson and Irfada Musammil were also recognized and celebrated for their achievements in the fields of business and design. The event, sponsored by the USAID, was held with the participation of Speaker Karu Jayasuriya as the chief guest. Profiles of these 12 prominent women will be showcased near the exhibition stand at the public entrance area of Parliament.
And that's a wrap of Primetime News for tonight. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Dasni Athada.
And I'm Shahin Jurong Party. Good night and take care.